What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Lightning Lamp podcast. I am here with Steve
Hello.
and Tim,
What's up?
and this is our halfway mark podcast. Most teams by now, actually, almost every team has either gotten to or passed the halfway mark of 28 games. Some are at like 26, 27, but for the most part, the rest of the league has caught up and they are around that halfway mark. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about different things. We're going to be talking about some teams, some players, giving out some awards, doing our actual NHL award predictions, and the like. We do want to start off with some news, however. We will start, as always, in the city of Buffalo. Ralph Krueger today was, quote-unquote, relieved from his head coaching jobs, a.k.a. they probably threw him off the top floor of the executive building after the Sabres dropped, I think, their 12th game in a row the other night, losing to the New Jersey Devils. So I guess what I want to ask you guys is what kind of, impact do you think this is going to have on the team? What kind of coach do you think the Sabres should be looking for? And do you have anybody in mind? Or do you think that this is maybe just the first domino to fall in what's looking like it's going to be a tumultuous offseason for this team? How do you feel about this whole situation going on in Buffalo?
Well, I mean, it was inevitable, right? You had to do something, and you can't fire the team, so this is the only other option you have, I guess. I feel bad for Ralph Krueger in some ways because he did really get handed, like, a terrible situation. But that being said, he didn't make it any better for himself. Like, there was no improvement, like we kept saying. Like, they just kept making steps backwards. But to answer your question as to what should they be looking for, I mean, honestly, I would come give Jim Montgomery a call if he's available, like, just to see what he's up to, Like, it can't hurt. And he did well with the Dallas Stars. He's proven he can play with younger players, you know what I mean?
Would you be looking for a nurturing type coach, a disciplinarian, maybe just give somebody, a veteran, a new guy a shot? Like, what do you think fits the mold of, well, what we could say is currently the build of the Sabres team? It might look a lot different after this offseason, that's for sure. But, what style of coaching do you think that this team would respond to?
Well, I guess we've seen it all at this point, right? They've
Daryl
had
Sutter.
disciplinarians. Well, too bad he just signed an extension in Calgary.
Yeah.
No,
Instantly
I'm just
signed
kidding though,
that
because the
3-year contract.
disciplinarian, like that's the type
Yeah.
of coach. Someone suicides day one.
I mean,
Yeah.
it worked, eh? I think they're 3-0 under him. They beat Montreal twice.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily the way they should go specifically.
You know, I think one of the things that we can talk about when it comes to Ralph Krueger and the job that he did with this team is he was handed a rough roster, but I think this past, the season up to this point is really kind of the most damning evidence against him that maybe there's just something he's not getting right. And the reason I say that is because you look at this team and you look at, had this team been able to stay in games based on their virtue of goal scoring, but their goaltending and defense was letting them down, I would be more inclined to believe that that's just a failure of the roster. However, when you look at the offensive output of this team, Jack Eichel to this point I think only has 2 or 3 goals. Taylor Hall to this point only has 2 goals. I think Eric Stahl only has something like 10 or 12 points. This team ostensibly in the offseason was built to score, and he was handed a pretty good top 6, all things considered. And it just seems like he can't get any of them going. And I think that that's really, to me, what kind of sells me on him being part of the issue. Because, like I said, if they were scoring goals but still getting blown out in the defensive zone, you could look at them and be like, well, you handed him ham scraps on the back end and you'd never upgraded in net, But he can't even get, well, I'll say one of the best goal scorers and one overrated but still should be a 20 to 30 goal scorer going. Do you think there's any validity in that statement? Like, do you think I'm just full of nonsense on that?
Well, I mean, I think you're right because his whole thing when they brought him in was he was supposed to help them defend better. I mean, that was the whole point of bringing in Ralph Kruger in the first place. But I mean, to your point, he hasn't gotten them to score, and he very clearly cannot get them to defend. So it's almost like he failed on all fronts, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
He took the pieces he had and made them worse somehow.
He really did. Like, I really don't know how.
Like, it wasn't enough for him to just, like...
Continue the mediocrity. He made it worse.
Yeah, I don't even understand how.
Yeah, I don't either, just because, like, if you look at that roster, like, it got better, technically. Like, the more time he was there, the more it was like, oh, okay, he's getting, like, a serviceable team out here, but, like, the worse they got over and over again, you know?
Do you think that this is one of the worst seasons we've ever seen from a team, just in terms of just how wrong everything's gone for them this year? You know, coming out of the gate, they were expected to maybe not make the playoffs, but at least make another step. They had a good top six. Jack Eichel was having a career year last year before the pause. And then this season hits. They're worse than the Red Wings. Eichel is hurt. Taylor Hall has 2 goals. You know, Linus Ullmark was having a career season before he got hurt. Is this just like one of the worst seasons we've ever seen from a team? Or I guess most unfortunate?
I mean, in terms of, like, teams personally that I've seen, yeah, this is probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen. I mean, the only thing I could think of that was probably worse was the Columbus Blue Jackets in, like, the end of the Rick Nash era. And, like, that was atrocious. So I don't know if you want to be mentioned in that same sentence, you know?
Yeah, I guess one last part about the Buffalo Sabres and their coaching vacancy at this point.
81, good number.
I personally would not be hiring a coach until this offseason is done. I would think I would slap somebody on the interim, because you don't know what kind of team you're going to have after this offseason, because...
No, you don't even know if Jack Eichel is going to be there or not.
Exactly. Taylor Hall at this point I think is as good as gone. I don't think there's really any chance that he stays in Buffalo. But the rumors around Jack Eichel are starting to circulate and get stronger. The rumors around Ristolainen are getting stronger. Dahlin's name was thrown around earlier in the year. Apparently teams are calling the Sabres on these guys. I don't think that I would hire a head coach expecting the same roster going into next year. So you don't want to hire a coach and say, okay, he's the coach for this current roster, when next year the roster might look entirely different.
Yeah, no, that would be stupid. I don't know if I'd really be looking to do anything right now anyway, just with to see what other teams do, you know, heading into the off season, because I'm sure there's going to be more than one coaching change in the league. So it'd be worth them doing their due diligence and just waiting, right?
I think so, and especially because you have to take into consideration, not only is this offseason going to be tumultuous for the Sabres from the current personnel, but there's also the expansion draft they have to worry about. So you just don't know what you're coming out of this offseason with. And like you said, you don't know what coach you're going to be available. I mean, I'd like to think that John Tortorella will likely be available at the end of the season.
Yikes.
Based on the current trajectory of how things are going.
Yikes.
But who knows? I do want to move on to another bit of news. I do want to kind of just from everyone, I did mean to do this at the top of the podcast, just from everyone here on the show and everyone that we've ever had on the show, we want to extend our condolences, well wishes, positive energy to the family, the friends, the teammates, the loved ones, and of the young Dynamo St. Petersburg captain. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I don't want to butcher it, but you know, the unfortunate passing of this young man who's 19 from a puck to the head. So just want to give a little acknowledgement to that. Just send well wishes and positive energy towards anyone really that was close to this young man, and also to the player who tried to make the dump in. Just I hope that he knows that it's not his fault. It was just a routine play with just a freak accident and just a bizarre occurrence, all things considered. So just want to extend our positive energy to anyone involved in that situation. And furthermore, just to get back on the NHL side of things, speaking of, again, unfortunate occurrences, I do want to talk about the Tanev hit in Pittsburgh the other night. I think this is worth talking about. It blew up on hockey Twitter overnight. There have been many different viewpoints on it. Before I get into what I think and before we start the debate, just give me a brief synopsis. Like, what do you guys think of the hit? And then we'll all go around, we'll give our thoughts, and then we'll kind of get into the debate because I know that there is a lot of debate going on. So we'll start with Tim because I think you're the one. I think Steve and I mostly agree, and I think you had a different opinion. So we'll start with you, and then I'll go to Steve.
I just don't agree with him getting ejected from the game. It was definitely a charge. Definitely maybe something to look at, but I don't know. I just didn't feel that it was an ejection.
Okay. Steve, how do you feel about that play?
I just think it was one of the most brain-dead things I've ever seen in hockey. I mean, the guy took 9 strides to hit somebody. Like, why would you ever think to do that? Like, you skate from your face-off dot almost 100 feet away to hit this guy, and for what? Like, okay, he hit Malkin earlier in the game and knocked Malkin out. It's not his fault that Malkin's soft and can't get stood up, Like, so I understand wanting to take a run at him, but, like, why would you pick that moment to do it, Especially with you're coming in so fast and he's standing still pretty much. Like, he's got no way to protect himself. You're just going to kill him no matter what. So, I mean, like, I agree with the ejection and everything. Like, I don't think the refs really had a choice when they looked at it. Like, no matter how they cut it, it was bad.
Yeah, so we talked about this in depth last night between us and our friends. I'm of the thought process that I don't know what he was thinking, and my issue with it isn't necessarily the hit, because Tanev hits him about 15 feet away from the boards. Generally speaking, you're in a gray area there when you're hitting somebody that close, because there is that risk that you're going to hit them and they're going to hit the ice and slide into the boards, and that's always a danger for whiplash and other things of that nature. You're in a risky area, I think, when you're you're in that danger zone when you're just far away enough that he's going to build up momentum when he slides into the boards, but you're not close enough. Like when you rub somebody out along the boards, there's not really a lot of momentum going there. The issue is, and this is my problem with how this is being represented on hockey Twitter all over the place, is this hit is being misrepresented. Everyone is showing the slow motion replay of just the hit. So everyone's up in arms because they're like, oh, this is a clean hit. Are we not playing hockey? Yeah, the hit is fine until you zoom out and watch for like 3 seconds before, when I legitimately sat and counted. He took 2 quick cuts to get his speed up, and then he took about 5 or 6 strides into the hit. He was legitimately along the right boards before he came across the entire ice to hit the guy. So you can call it 5 or 6 strides, or if you want to count up the whole thing, it's essentially 7 or 8 strides towards this hit, which is a clear, there's no nonsense around that. That's boarding, right? The problem is when you hit somebody 15 feet away from the boards with that much speed, you're essentially boarding them at that point, because you're hitting them so hard that they're flying through the air and they don't contact the ice first, so they don't even slide into the boards. He hit the boards first. Why Tanev thought that he should take 6 strides across the ice and hit him like that is beyond me. Like... You were going to say something, Steve?
No, that's really what I was thinking. Like, if you would have just skated like right up at him and hit him like after taking 6 strides, it's like, all right, it's still a charge, but you didn't launch him 9 feet into the boards where he can't protect himself, Like, at least he would have hit the ice and slid and did something. But like the whole thing was just bad to me. Like the way he hit him, where he came from, why he skated so far, like it just wasn't great. Like, he could have taken a better opportunity to try to get back at him for the hit he threw on Malkin earlier in the game.
Well, that's another issue, right? Like, you were gonna. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You know.
No, I mean that's really it. Like he could have just made better decisions than that. And like he was mad about the 10-minute misconduct and like the getting tossed, but like you put the refs in a terrible position. Like they either call it 5 in a game and toss you, they give you like a couple of minutes, they give you like 4, and then they have to worry about the game getting out of hand. Like you put them in a bad spot. So I guess the best option for them was to throw them out. You know.
So
yeah, I guess my issue was just the officiating on the call, probably. Like I guess I just didn't like the way that they handled it.
I mean, they called it right away.
No, I know. I mean, they did review it. Like they went around. And
They have to. As soon as they call a major, it's a forced review from the league.
yeah, after what happened with Pavelski, they
Yeah,
changed
but they
the
didn't even
rules.
call the major right away. They went and huddled and then.
No,
talked
they
for
called
a
the
few
major, and
minutes.
that's why the league called them down to review it.
Well, I'm saying like in the play, like they.
No,
Well,
so
you
It
can't
so
call-
happened. Everyone was like, "What?"
so Tim is
And then-
technically correct because when I was watching it, the hit was thrown and then it was like
No
5
one
or
knew what
10
happened.
seconds after, and then the ref called it. You know, I think that's what
Yeah.
Tim's trying to get at.
Yeah, like, and then they went to the video review, and I don't agree with a boarding on the call. Like I agree with the severity of it maybe, but I don't
I
agree
mean, they should
with.
have just given the charge. That's really what it was.
Yeah,
But I mean,
like they should have just maybe like if they wanted to just toss him, they could have tossed him like another way. Like
I don't know. I think their hands are kind of tied. As the second they call a major on boarding, it's an automatic game misconduct. And once you make the call, you make the call. They can't change it to a board, you know. So once the lead referee decided it was a charge and he gave him the 5, like they had no choice but to throw him out.
It was definitely a weird call to call it boarding, I think, just because it was very clearly a charge, not a board. So the call itself is a bit bizarre. I just don't see how. I don't see how you can think that hit is clean, period, because I'm seeing a lot of that on Twitter. And again, that's also partly because every chucklehead, hot take artist, by the way, on hockey Twitter, calling you guys out, you idiots, are sitting there posting the video, slow motion replay of the hit itself, which is not what everyone has a problem with. The problem is the 18 strides he took to get across the ice. The hit itself is fine. It's a bit of a gray area, like I said, 15 feet from the boards. You put yourself in danger of hurting somebody. But the hit itself was pretty clean. It wasn't head contact. He wasn't, targeting the head or anything like that. He didn't low bridge him. The hit was clean. The problem is the fact that he ran basically a 100-meter sprint to get to that point.
Well, the big issue everyone on Twitter has too is they said like they keep saying he had the puck, and it's like, right, that's fine. He can have the puck, but you still can't take 9 strides to hit him.
Whether he had the puck or not doesn't make it not a dangerous play. It's almost like saying like when Cronwall did the famous Cronwall hit into the fucking segment along the bench that it was a clean hit. It's like, oh yeah, he had the puck. It's like, okay, maybe, but should you be shoving someone's head into like the metal beam?
Oh, that was Chara on Pacioretty that did that.
Cronwall also did. He has an infamous hit with it.
But I know what you're saying. Like it's whether
Like-
they had the puck or not doesn't really matter anymore.
You can't justify the safety of the hit, whether they had the puck or not. Like from a safety aspect, it was like absolutely chimpanzee. The guy had his elbows on the ice while he was gliding across.
Well, actually, that's the other issue. He never stopped to glide. He was striding the entire time. Right before he hits him, he digs his heel into the ice and launches himself into the guy.
It was an old hockey play, is what I would say.
My other issue is the justification for it being he wanted revenge on the Malkin hit. So instead of making a clean hit, or instead of, even if you felt the Malkin hit was dirty, drop the gloves. I mean, that's why hockey is still allowing the rule of fighting. It's so you can police the game. that whole point of fighting being in the game is so that you can get retribution in a fair and honest way with we won't say no chance for the guy because obviously you get hurt in a fight all the time, but at least a lesser chance than you launching yourself 30 feet into this guy 10 feet from the boards.
Well, the real thing is, like, in a fight, you have two willing participants, right? Like, you don't just come up and blow this guy up when he doesn't see you and get him killed. Like, you're both willingly fighting one another. So if you get hurt, like, it's on you, you know?
I think my final thoughts are it should have been a charge in the game, but the league should review it for intent to injure.
I think you should get a game or two, honestly. Like,
That's
just for how
what I'm saying.
stupid
Like,
it was. Like, you can't let
with
guys make
intent
brain
to
dead plays like
injure,
that.
with the intent to injure, I think it's a serious hit. Just the hit, like in the clip, like you said, Rob. Like if you just snip the clip, like just to the hit, I'd be like, oh, okay, this guy just got fucking dummied. But
The context is what makes it bad, right?
yeah, exactly. I think like you said, it's that intention of like seeing him locking on, skating across the ice, and saying, all right, no matter what happens, I'm fucking this guy up.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think a game or two, just because you have to sit down, at least have a hearing with him, even if you're just gonna fine him, right? Or like offer him the phone hearing, because you have to let him know, like, dude, you can be mad all you want, but the league isn't concerned about the hit. The league is concerned about the baton race you ran before hitting the guy into the boards. You know, you can't do that. And I think the refs honestly made the right call. I think, especially when you go to the review, because we have that now, when you watch that clip back, I think it's 5 and a game for charging. I have no issue with that. I think they made the right call. Brandon Tanev can be mad all he wants. Stupid hit, shouldn't have made the play. And quite honestly, you're a little punk for not dropping the gloves if that's what you wanted to do. I'm just going to say it. You know, if you're mad at a guy for cheap shotting you, drop the gloves. Don't put somebody in the hospital over it. It's stupid. And it really makes you look like a punk, really, at the end of the day, is the issue. So, any final thoughts on this whole situation?
No. I think that sums it up.
So, we are going to move on to talking about the midway point of the season, and we're going to talk about this in the context of giving out our awards and the NHL awards, because when we do that, we will be talking about the different teams and the divisions and stuff as we go through this. So currently just some stats. We'll just throw out some fun stats to you guys. Leading the league in goal scoring is Austin Matthews with 21. The next closest pair is Draisaitl and McDavid with 17 each. McDavid is leading the league in apples with 36. Patrick Kane has 30. McDavid and Draisaitl are 1-2 for points with 53 and 46. Vasilevsky leads the league in wins with 18. Grubauer has 16. Goals against average with a minimum of 14 games played. Fleury is leading the league at 1.77. Grubauer with a 1.85. Save percentage, Fleury with a 9.36. Vasi with a 9.32. And shutouts, Fleury and Grubauer both have 4 to lead the league. So just some fun stats, just throwing it out there. We have the top 10 stats in front of us right now for our references. So let's just get into it. We'll start with our podcast awards. And we're going to start with the Standout Team Award. My standout team so far halfway through the year is the Minnesota Wild. And my honorable mention is the Winnipeg Jets. You guys know me. I've always been a big critic of the Minnesota Wild. Been very hard on that team for quite some time. But you can't argue with the young guys coming through on this team. Kaprizov and Kaapo Kähkönen are absolutely lighting it up right now. They're doing a fantastic job, much better than I thought they would be doing, and honestly, can't really argue with them at the moment. My honorable mention goes to the Jets just because, again, the defense still isn't great, but they find themselves in second place in point percentage in that Canadian division, so they got to be doing something right. So we'll go to Steve. Give me your winner, your honorable mention, and kind of just talk us through it.
So my standout team is the Blackhawks, just because I didn't think they'd be even clawing at a playoff spot this year, but here they are, sitting, 3rd or 4th in their division. My honorable mention was the Florida Panthers because, again, they've just been absolutely red hot to start the year.
Yes.
You know, Bobrovsky's looked like his old self. Barkov and Huberdeau are tearing it up. But yeah, but I agree. I had a hard time with this one because I was gonna pick the Minnesota Wild as well because like you said, they've been absolutely lights out recently. But I ended up settling on the Blackhawks just because I mean, you can't argue with the results.
Tim.
I picked the Panthers and the Wild. The Panthers is my main pick, and the Wild is my honorable mention.
Do you have any other
And
specific reasons, or kind of just what we talked about?
I mean, the Panthers are just red hot, and they're literally tearing it up. For some reason, they can't beat some of the shittiest teams in the league, but I'll let that go.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about obviously these teams as we go down the list, but the Panthers to me were a big surprise just because I thought they had one of the worst off seasons out of any team in the league. Last year they traded away Vincent Trocheck. They lose Mike Hoffman to free agency. They kind of had an issue in net, locking down, Bob is still there getting paid his $10 million a year. I didn't really like the look of this team. Obviously, they had a big win with their trade with the Pittsburgh Penguins getting rid of that Mike Matheson contract and getting Patrick Hornquist, who's been really good for them this year, out of it. That being said, I didn't really see a whole lot that I liked from this team. And lo and behold, they're second in the Central Division. They're tied with the Tampa Bay Lightning for points, which is just absurd. And the Wild, again, it's really the young guys. They're leading the show here in Minnesota. But
I mean, when you have Kirill Kaprizov, who's just absolutely electric, right? I still think it's really funny that people are talking about him like because he is a rookie, right? He's never played in the league before, but he's 24 now, 23, 24, and he's been playing in the KHL this whole time.
Yeah, he's 23, I think.
So it's really not that surprising to me that like he specifically came over and is producing. But like from a team standpoint, I was very surprised that the Wild even were competitive most nights,
Especially because they traded away Dubnyk. They decided to go with a new direction in net, and we know that typically rookie goalies struggle coming out of the gate. I mean, they have that adjustment period because playing in the AHL is not the same as playing in the NHL, but I mean, Kakin has just been so good. I think he's like on an 8-game win streak or something like that. Something along the lines like that. Next, we have the most disappointing team, and this one hurts me personally, putting this team on here. But I had to go with the Dallas Stars. I mean, they have 9 wins in 25 games. That's just not good enough after being the defending Western Conference champions last year. It's just not. I mean, they're still in the playoff race by virtue of their many overtime losses, but 9 wins in 25 games, it's just not good enough. And my honorable mention goes to the New York Rangers just because I personally had very high expectations for them this year. If you remember my preseason draft rankings, or not draft rank, my preseason power rankings, I had them above the New York Islanders. I thought they were going to take, I think, third. I put them in the division. It's just been a rough go of things. They've had their fair share of injuries, but even outside of that, just some guys not playing up to expectations and other issues down the line. So those are my 2 teams for that category. So we'll go to Tim. We'll start with you on this one.
My disappointing team is the Canucks, for obvious reasons. They look awful. I don't know how JT Miller has any points this season. He looks like trash. He shows up for 3 minutes plays 20 minutes a night, plays 3 minutes. Like actually plays 3 minutes. So like Elias Pettersson's just invisible. The only person visible on the team is Quinn Hughes, and he's everywhere on the ice doing everything. So he doesn't do much. So team just looks awful. And then my runner-up is the Sabres, and that's just because I expected them to be bad, but like, God.
But
This
like,
is bad.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly. They're just a trash can. They're a burnt. I would have given them number one, but they're such a trash can fire. I couldn't give them most disappointing.
You just can't reward that level of incompetence.
Like, because I didn't expect them to be that good, so I was like, you know what? I thought they were just gonna be like a trash can. They somehow lit on fire.
Somebody threw a match into the trash
So it's not
can.
that disappointing. At least the Canucks like went from like a perfectly good city to a rioted city. Got them.
What do you have for this category, Steve?
I also had the Canucks number one, but my number two is the Calgary Flames. And it's just because, like, what is wrong with that roster? Like, I really don't understand. I feel like every year there's one piece of the, like, machine that just doesn't work or just underperforms. Last year it was Johnny Gaudreau. The year before that it was Sean Monahan. Like, they can never get everything working all at once. And they've just been changing coaches so frequently the last couple of years. This is their third head coach in the last 3 or 4 seasons.
Something like that, yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard not to be disappointed in the Calgary Flames, especially after going out and getting Jacob Markstrom and everything.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember again in my preseason rankings, I had them first in the Canadian division. I was saying early on they were my Stanley Cup finalist pick. That's a freezing cold take at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is with them. You know, when you look at the roster, I think that you can see a bit of depth issues on forward specifically. They have some guys I think playing out of place. Like Dylan Dubé's been playing top 6 minutes every now and then and top line power play minutes. And he's not a bad player. I think Dylan Dubé's a really, really good power forward. But I don't necessarily think he gels with that high flying offensive top 6. And I think he'd be better off suited as a third liner. Same thing with Mangiapane. Mangiapane really reminds me of a Josh Bailey type player, a guy that for some reason gets stuck on your second line, but you know deep down in your heart he'd really be better off as a depth third line option. And I think you can see a bit of issues with depth on that. I think maybe their defense isn't as good as it used to be, but man, I mean, I don't know, like, not even in a playoff picture right now. Well, in a picture, but they're not even in a playoff spot right now. They're between 12 and 3.
I mean, that division's not particularly strong. The Canadian division, you know?
I mean, yeah, you know, especially because the Canucks flamed out, you know, pun intended, but you basically have two doormats, right? You have the Canucks, who all fairness to the Canucks, they're only 3 points out of the playoffs, and they have had
better as of late.
Yes, they've looked a lot better as of late. That being said, though, there should be no reason why the Calgary Flames aren't easily able to compete with anybody in this division, given that they are, in my opinion, the most complete team, and yet here we are. So that's kind of a yikes.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the standout player, and I had to pin my dude Dollar Bill Kirill. Kirill Kaprizov comes over, and to Steve's point, you know, he's not in the traditional sense a rookie because he's been playing in the KHL this whole time, but I mean 25 points in 27 games. Can't really argue that as a 23-year-old kid. And my honorable mention goes to Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane is doing it all this year with no Kirby Dach, no Jonathan Toews. Dude's been lights out, third in the league in points. Can't really say much more about Patrick Kane other than he saw that the team needed him to step up, and boy howdy has he stepped up. So we'll go to Steve on this one. Who are your standout players?
I had a hard time with this one because I couldn't really think of anybody that was like outperforming expectations to me personally. Like Patrick Kane is having a great year, but I mean this guy's just a monster. So for him to be third in the league in points doesn't surprise me. But I guess I went with Pavel Buchnevich for the Rangers, just because I've been watching the most of him, and he really has been an impact player for the Rangers this year. Even after losing Panarin to injury, Buchnevich managed to step up and increase his point production to over a point per game in that stretch. So to me, that was earned him a spot as our most standout player, or my most standout player.
Tim, what do you got?
My standout player is Barkov. Kid's a stud, and he's lighting it up every night. And my runner-up player is Kopitar, and that's because he's somehow has 25 assists, passing to no one, and he's tearing it up. He's carrying the Kings kind of right now.
You know, I thought about putting Brown on here just because at one point Brown was leading that entire division in goals.
Yeah, that was kind of wild.
And honestly, he might still be if he didn't get hurt. And I can't really argue with Kopitar. I think if there was ever going to be a time where LA traded Kopitar, it might be this year because he's having such a fantastic year. And Barkov, I mean, we always know Barkov is good. Are you seeing anything different in his game this year when you're watching him? Or do you think that he's just taking the next step, continuing to develop into the elite player that we all knew he was going to be?
Everything he's trying to do is just working. Like, I don't know how to I don't know how to explain the difference. Like, he's just, like, instead of, like, not making the pass, he's making the pass now.
You think he's just seeing the game in a different way?
He's just playing better.
That's fair. That's fair.
He's playing better no matter who's out there with him at this point. It helps that he's out there with, like, excellent players, obviously, like Huberdeau, but he's still doing a lot of great things on the ice.
He really is rounding out to be like a dominant center iceman. Like, he's taking big matchup minutes now, and he's playing a shutdown role in addition to all the points he puts up. Like, this guy is, honestly, he's probably going to take the mantle as probably the best two-way center in the league when Patrice Bergeron finally retires.
Yeah, I think if Bergeron wasn't in the league, I think he would have won a Selke trophy already, to be honest with you. I mean, he just makes the smart plays. You know, a guy like Bergeron, a lot of what makes him so good is his face-offs and his hustle, right? But you look at Barkov on the defensive side of the puck, and it doesn't necessarily even look like he's working that hard because he's just so smart.
He's just always in the right position.
Right. He's kind of like a Jacob Slavin in that way. You don't notice Slavin, you know, having to make these 200-foot back checks because he's already there, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, the guy is just so much smarter than everybody else on the ice. He just never puts himself out in a bad position.
So we'll keep an eye on Barkov, especially we'll talk about the Selke trophy later. But moving on to the most disappointing player. My award this year goes to none other than Taylor Hall. 2 goals on the season. Not worth $8 million. Not even close. I don't think much more needs to be said other than that. You can argue up and down whatever you want to talk about. He's playing with great players because he's been playing with Eichel for most of the season. You can argue his assists. Listen, you didn't pay him to get assists. And he's not getting assists in the way that a Jack Eichel gets assists, where he's making players around him better. A lot of the times I'm seeing him pick up assists, it's simple plays. So he's my most disappointing player, and my honorable mention goes to Carter Hart, which pains me to say because I absolutely love Carter Hart, but good God does he need to get his act together because he has been essentially horrendous this year.
Yeah, you're telling me, bro. He's on my fantasy team.
So we'll start with Tim on this one. Most disappointing player.
My most disappointing player goes to none other than the Canuck, Elias Pettersson. The most disappointing player in the league, in my opinion. Guy should be contending for a Hart trophy, and he's contending for last spot on the first line. Like, I don't even... he's lazy, he's a bum, he doesn't do anything. Like, I don't know what to say. And my runner-up is a tie between Mika Zibanejad and Braden Holtby, because Mika's turned it up a little bit as of recently, so I didn't want to give him the full one. So he gets like a half of one. He gets a half a runner-up, and Holtby gets the other half a runner-up.
So what about you, Steve?
See, I also picked Pedersen, and it's just because I expected Pedersen to really take a big step this year. I thought he was going to finally break out and, like Tim said, be competing for a Hart Trophy. I mean, last year he was just so dominant in all aspects of the game, like puck recovery, like transition, offensive zone, offensive zone possession. Like the guy did it all. And now this year, it doesn't help that he's been injured. I don't know how many times.
He also just looked so good last year, like just skating. Like he was. Some of the best highlights last year were his.
And then my runner-up is Mika Zibanejad for most of the same reasons. Like he just looks off this year. He doesn't look like he has the same, explosiveness that he had last year. He's not blowing by defenders, and his shot doesn't seem.
Can't shoot, can't skate, can't pass.
His shot really doesn't seem to be as lethal as it was. I mean, he's getting a lot of the same chances that last year would have been goals 100%, and he's missing the net. They're rolling off his stick. He's hitting the goalie square on the chest, and I mean, he's been okay defensively, but like we don't need Mika Zibanejad to be a checking line center. We need him to start scoring goals, especially after coming off 41 goals in 57 games. To have 2 goals and I only think one of them, neither of them are even strength goals. One's an empty netter and the other one's a power play goal.
Do you think that maybe part of that is the expectations he might be placing on himself after last year?
Oh, probably. I mean, there's probably something to do with it. There's also something to be said for maybe he changed his workout routine in the off season, so there's something to be said for that. Maybe, I don't know. He spent some time on the injured list or the COVID list before the season started. I mean, it could be anything, and I don't really want to speculate because we're never really gonna know. But he really is just dramatically underperforming all expectations. And it's funny because the team around him got better. Like when he was playing with like ham scraps and the Rangers were trading off like Rick Nash and everybody 2-3 years ago, he put up 72 points on a team with nobody, and then he scores 41 goals in 57 games on a team that really wasn't that great, and he did it all without playing with Artemi Panarin most of the time. So I just don't know what happened this year. The wheels really fell off the wagon for Mika.
Yeah, and again, the Rangers are rumored to be in on Jack Eichel, so if that happens, maybe we do see Panarin or Zibanejad get shifted down to the second line. Maybe
they were talking about trading Zibanejad for Eichel.
There are no lines on the Rangers right now. No one is safe anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. The final one of our awards before we go into the real NHL awards is the LTL Podcast Bum Award. And my bum award for the halfway mark goes to none other than the record-setting man himself, the Great 8 Alexander Ovechkin. Not really thrilled with his attitude this year between the COVID situation early on in the year, his spearing of, I forget who he speared, that other player in a very sensitive area, Trent Frederick, and then going to bat for a teammate who is the most penalized player in the NHL since he's been in the NHL in such a fiery way. I think Ovi just really is having a good year on the ice, an absolutely awful year for his attitude and his actions in the game. And my honorable mention goes to Kevin Adams, the Buffalo Sabres GM, because he fired Kruger this year, and yet early on in the season when all the indications were they still needed help in several key areas, and in the offseason, I think the Sabres had a great offseason, but again, he didn't address any other issues other than the forwards, and that's really burned him because those forwards aren't producing. Maybe if Kevin Adams would have stepped out for a goalie and a defenseman, even if the forwards weren't producing, maybe they would be at least respectable because they would be able to keep the puck out of the net, and yet he's done absolutely nothing. So those are my 2 bum awards. So Steve, who's getting your bum award?
So my first pick is Brandon Tanev, just for that absolutely brain dead play the other night. Like, I just don't understand why you would do something like that. And then, the real honorable mention is Tom Wilson for being Tom Wilson. But as always, my honorable mention is David Backes. Always has to come out, honorable bum award. I'm pretty sure he just got waived.
Yeah, he did.
The other day. So here's to you, David. You're already in the Hall of Fame, but you're just going to keep collecting that hardware from me. I see you, kid.
You know, Brandon Tanev should really be proud because it's really hard to unseat David Backes from Steve's Bum Award. So,
Yeah, it really is. But when you skate 150 feet to throw a man headfirst into the boards, it really kind of takes the cake, you know?
Tim, who's getting your podcast Bum Awards?
My Bum of the Year award was really tough to decide on because there were so many bums. But my Bum of the Year award goes to Jack Eichel. And yeah, I'm calling Jack Eichel a bum. And yeah, it's a hot take. I think he's really bumming it around up there.
Well, I mean, he's hurt right now, so.
Yeah, now he's really bumming it around because he's actually a bum. He's hurt. But my runner-up goes to Quinn. Coach Quinn. For somehow
Really?
managing to fuck up the Rangers.
I think the real issue with David Quinn is, like, I don't understand what he's doing to these young players. He was supposed to be a developmental coach, and, like, he's done nothing but seemingly stunt the growth of all of our young players. Capo Caco showed such, like, positive strides in the playoffs last year.
Even at the end of the season. Got
and
great the
now-
first 5 games.
But as soon as he, like, made a mistake or whatever, David Quinn would just, like, shift him down in the lineup. He'd throw him here, he'd throw him there. It's like...
He played with Kreider, and he played with Book, and he played great. Then they started changing the lines, and they fucked everything up. He played with Strome then. He played well with Strome and Kreider, and they switched it again.
The real issue is, like, when they've managed to get him going, the rest of the team would stop. So it's like, I just was really hoping for an Andrei Svechnikov type second season from him, right? Where Svechnikov came in, scored his 35 points, wasn't bad, but wasn't great for the Hurricanes. But in his second year, which was last year, the guy was a fucking animal. Like, scores 2 lacrosse goals, just absolute monster on the ice, you know. So I was hoping for that out of Capo, and yeah, David Quinn seems hell bent on not letting that happen. Doesn't give him a shot on power play 1 when Panarin goes down. Doesn't even give Lafreniere the shot on power play 1 when he goes down. They give it to a guy like Connor Blackwell, who, don't get me wrong, Blackwell's played well, but is a career depth piece. Like, why on earth would you put him in over your first or second overall pick from one of the last 2 seasons? You know? It's just, like, mind-boggling decisions. And the decision to play Jack Johnson over and over and over again when he clearly has been the Rangers' worst defenseman. Like, the coaching decisions by this man make no sense. And for a roster that's as loaded up front as it is, because let's be honest, the Rangers are super top-heavy and their defense is pretty spotty, the only bright spot they should have is their power play, and it's been absolutely abysmal. Like, and he had that right last year. The Rangers were like top 10 in the power play, but for this year, we're top 10 in penalty killing, which makes absolutely no sense.
Also, my third, because I'm going to give someone a third, is Jack Johnson. Bum.
Just terrible. Just absolutely awful.
Guy goes out there, he either turns it over or he just rips it and misses the net.
Or he takes a penalty. He seems to take a lot of penalties. And they're always brain-dead penalties, too. Gotta be skating towards him, he's like, I'm about to cross-check this man right up in his head. It's like, all right, Jack, maybe don't do that.
He's a half a foot in front of me. Might as well throw my stick in his arms.
Like, it's
See if I can't slow him up a little bit.
Just mind-boggling coaching decisions by David Quinn this year.
So yeah, that's why they go to him.
All right. Fair enough. So we'll go on to the NHL Awards, our watch lists here. So we'll start with the one that everyone loves to talk about, the Hart Memorial Trophy for League MVP. This might be a bit of a hot take, but I don't really know if it necessarily is. My front runner is Patrick Kane. I think the Chicago Blackhawks would be absolutely nowhere near even close to as good as they would be without Patrick Kane. And like I said earlier, he's doing it without Jonathan Toews, without Kirby Dach, and DeBrincat was hurt for a part of this year. He's found a way to make it work with Pius Suter. It just seems like you can put this guy with anyone, and he's going to score. And he's absolutely, in my opinion, the MVP for having as good of a season as he is with the team that was around him. And my runner-up would be Austin Matthews. I think either you have to take some kind of pride in being 4 goals up on the next closest person. Auston Matthews, 21 goals. He had a bit of a dry spell after that wrist injury, and yet he's just come back and been absolutely incredible. So those are my 2 picks for the Hart Memorial Trophy. So we'll go to Tim. We'll go to you first on this one.
I also had Patrick Kane, actually. But my runner-up would probably go to Barkov. I think Barkov's doing a really great job down in Florida, and I think if that team winds up winning the President's Trophy, which they're on pace to at this point, he definitely should be in the contention for Hart.
That's fair.
What about you, Steve?
I also, unsurprisingly, picked Patrick Kane. Guys dragging that Chicago team kicking and screaming into the playoff picture. My runner-up, probably not surprising, Connor McDavid. Guy leads the league in points. The Edmonton Oilers would be honestly nowhere without him. So it's hard to argue with, Connor McDavid's just sustained level of success over the last 4 or 5 years, Guy just continues to be an absolute animal. I mean, he's on pace to put up over 100 points in a shortened season. So that's why I'm picking McDavid. I mean, I guess it's kind of a tie, between McDavid and Draisaitl because both of them are so indispensable to those Oilers. But, McDavid is just the guy. I don't think the Oilers would be even close to as good as they are without Connor McDavid.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't argue Connor. It's really hard to argue against him.
I mean, look, he's got 7 more points than the next closest guy, which is his winger in Leon Draisaitl, Leads the league in assists and is tied with Draisaitl for goals. I mean, it's hard to argue with that,
Yeah. I mean, it's Connor, bro. He's always going to be in that discussion. Yeah. All right. Next, we have the James Norris Trophy for League's Best Defenseman. My pick is Victor Hedman, because not only is Victor Hedman leading the league in points, but you guys know how much I love his play on the defensive side of the puck. He plays the power play, the penalty kill, and he's logging nearly 25 minutes of time on ice. I mean, the guy does it all. He scores, he defends, he's all-around best defenseman, period, in the league, in my opinion, but also deserving of this award. And my runner-up is actually Jeff Petrie. I think he's having a fantastic year in Montreal. He's, I think, second in the league in points among defensemen. And again, he's another type of player. He also plays on that penalty kill. He can play those matchup type minutes if you need him to, and I think he's having a great season. So we'll go to Steve on this one first.
So my winner is Quinn Hughes. Wins his first Norris Trophy at 19 in my mind, or he's not 19 now. What is he, 20, 21?
Something like that, yeah.
But he's just been on a team like the Canucks, which has been such a disappointment as a whole. Quinn has looked unbelievable. Honestly, the most analogous thing I've seen to Brian Leetch. And, that's big praise, obviously, coming from me, a Ranger fan who loves Brian Leetch. But he just does everything. His defensive game might not be the best. He's not as good a defender as, Victor Hedman. He doesn't have the shutdown ability of Jacob Slavin or Seth Jones. But he's serviceable enough in his own end. And I think he's just so, a cut above everybody offensively, especially this year. I mean, if you gave him the same team that Hedman's playing on, I think he'd be leading the league in points too for defensemen. And that's not to take anything from Victor Hedman. It's just that it's really impressive to me that Quinn Hughes is almost a point per game, or was a point per game as a defender, on a team that really hasn't been scoring a whole lot and really has been a doormat for the NA for most of those teams in that division. My runner-up, Cale Makar. Hard to argue with the point production. And I know it's a skewed way to look at the Norris Trophy, and I've been a big proponent of saying it's stupid to base it all on point scoring, but again, Cale Makar is such a cut above everybody else offensively that it's hard to argue with him being in the conversation. I could see him not being the runner-up, but in my eyes, just the steps he's taken offensively this year have been really big. I mean, he's such a huge part of that Colorado power play, him and Sam Girard. I don't know. I could see your arguments for Victor Hedman and guys like that, but these guys I think are just having so much success offensively this season that's hard to argue with.
I mean, yeah, I love me some Quinn Hughes as well. So, Tim, what do you got?
I think who will win it will probably be Hedman, but my runner-up, who's my personal pick, is Neil Pianka, actually, in Winnipeg. I think he's actually playing hell above water, and I think he's playing great, especially on a Winnipeg team that's kind of struggling defensively otherwise.
Yeah, he's really taken a big step this year for them. He's been pretty impressive.
He's playing the third most time on the team overall. He's got 23 points on the season. He's like top 5, I think, for defenseman. So, not to judge all just off points, but in that regard, he's definitely lighting it up.
Yeah, no, he's taken a big step for them. I mean, he was good for them last year too, but I'm glad to see that Neil Pionk is continuing his development for Winnipeg, because the Rangers just didn't give him much of a fair shot.
Yeah, I think Pionk's definitely taken a big step for the Jets this year. Playing a lot of minutes on, like we've been saying, a defensively deficient team. He's having to log a lot of those tough matchups, and he's holding his weight. I mean, there's a reason that the Jets are second in that division right now. Vezina Trophy. My pick is Marc-Andre Fleury. Honestly, I know that Fleury's playing on a pretty good Vegas team, but I think the fortitude that he showed going into this season and how much he's just really stepped up and ran with this team after the injury of Robin Lehner really speaks volumes about his ability as a professional. And, yes, he's leading the league in both goals against and save percentage, but just the reality that he came into this season as a 1B goalie after so many years of being a starter in Vegas. Lehner goes down, and he's just taken the reins, and he's just gone crazy with it. So he's my pick for the Vezina at the moment. And my backup, or my runner-up, I should say, is actually Kaapo Kähkönen. I think, 205 and a 9.27 on a Minnesota Wild team. He's got 12 wins already. With a team that Minnesota's a good team by the virtue of their youth, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're great defensively. I think they're only just okay. And just the saves that this kid is making night in and night out for this Minnesota Wild team, I think he's absolutely lights out right now. So we'll start with Tim on this one, I think. I don't remember the order. Whatever. We'll go to Tim.
So my pick is actually it's Vasilevsky, just because Vasi's always just in the conversation. He's just a fair pick. And my runner-up, who, I mean, I really, it's a shame that Florida has Bob and Dreger, because I think both of them are actually having really great seasons, and they're going to take away from each other's possibility of getting that Vezina. But my runner-up's probably Varlamov.
Some Islanders love. I like it.
I hate the Islanders, but like, if the Islanders can manage, the Islanders are just like the Panthers in that they're in that President's Trophy contention right now. If they can still do it without Andersley, and he plays better because he's gonna have to, I think he should get it.
I've seen his name being thrown around, which is bizarre to me because I've never seen in my lifetime an Islanders goalie ever in the Vezina conversation. So I'll definitely take that. What about you, Steve? What do you got?
I went with Connor Hellebuck just because he himself is having a great season, again, behind a defensively deficient Winnipeg team. We keep saying that, but I mean, it's the truth. And Connor Hellebuck's just been rock solid for them. I mean, they're second in that division. He's been a big part of the reason why. And my runner-up is Sergey Bobrovsky, 12-2-2. I mean, his numbers aren't fantastic, but playing on a team like Florida, he's got a sub 3 goals against average and a save percentage almost at 910. So, I mean, that's impressive in and of itself. And he's looked a lot more like the old Sergey Bobrovsky than he did last year. He looks a lot more confident and a lot more in control than he did last year.
Yeah, I think I think Bob might be a bit of a long shot just because, like you said, his numbers, but he has looked significantly better lately. I mean, the beginning of the season was rough. He was still winning, but the beginning of the season was rough for him personally in terms of his stats. But, I mean, if he can keep playing this way down the stretch and the Panthers keep winning games, his numbers are just going to keep dropping. So I don't see why. There's definitely a possibility he will be in that conversation towards the end of the season. And Hellebuck, again, he's one of those guys that you don't see him in top 10 in any of the stats, but you have to watch him play to really get a sense of just how much he means to that team. And if he goes back to back on it, I won't really complain. I think he is, for lack of a better term, the Jets most nights.
Yeah, the only other goalie I would want to mention is Freddie Anderson, and that's just because for the years of abuse he's taken at the hands of the media in Toronto, this guy has been an absolute monster for them. I mean, what was it, last year through the halfway point, he'd won every single game that the Maple Leafs had won. Their backups had combined for 0 wins.
Yeah.
So there's a guy who keeps getting the short end of the stick in Toronto from the media, but definitely should be in a Vezina conversation, if not this year, especially if they win the division this year. But definitely a guy who deserves more respect than he gets.
100%. He gets trashed by the Toronto media for, I don't know, not getting a 50-save shutout every night. I don't know what they want from him.
Yeah, I don't know, especially with that team in front of him.
The Frank J. Selke Award, my front runner is, believe it or not, Patrice Bergeron. I mean, he's over 62% on his faceoffs, which is just, how do you even do that? Like, how is that even physically possible? We talk about guys being over 55% as elite. This guy's winning 62%, which is absurd. And my runner-up, you can call me a bit of a homer, but I think J.G. Pageau should get a look from the league. He's over 52% on his faceoffs. He plays top-line penalty kill, up and down the lineup, first to fourth line. He's done it all for the Islanders this year. He's out there on every big draw. Even when his line's not out there, he'll get sent out just to take the draw. He's one of the best two-way players in the league, and I think he's a little bit underappreciated. Steve, who do you got?
I also, unsurprisingly, have Patrice Bergeron winning it. I mean, what can you say? The guy's literally the best two-way player in the game. Like, there's not much up for discussion. My second place, I have Alexander Barkov, but I know how much Tim is having talking about Barkov this year, so I don't know if he picked him or not. So
I actually didn't.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So I would say I'd pick somebody else. But yeah, so it's Barkov. I mean, he's just been quietly going about being one of the most dominant players in the National Hockey League this year, bar none. So, and I think one day soon this is going to be his award. I mean, I don't see anybody really stopping him.
The only guy I think that's still somewhat young that might give him some issues is
Couturier, maybe.
Yeah, Sean Couturier, but Barkov's going to get one of these days. He's just too good not to.
Oh, yeah. Him and Couturier are probably going to end up trading them for a couple of years.
What about you, Tim?
My pick actually was, despite my feelings of him offensively this year, Claude Giroux's actually playing great defensively. It's the only thing he can do this season. Like, you put him out there with some of the best forwards in the league, and he just can't fucking score or get an assist. But
until lately, all of a sudden he decided to start playing.
It's the point production just wasn't consistent with him this season. Was the issue with his offensive game? But defensively, he's still unstoppable. He's also above 60% in the faceoff, which is insane. And he's out there for every important faceoff that Philly takes because they have no one else.
Yeah, well, Couturier's been out, right?
Yeah.
Who are you gonna put out there? Nolan Patrick.
He came back recently, didn't he?
Couturier? I don't think so. I don't think he played the last time the Rangers played the Flyers.
Couturier's healthy right now.
Is he? He's
Yeah.
playing?
Yeah, because I have him on my fantasy team.
So how much I paid attention to that Ranger Flyer game, bro. They just got shelled so hard I didn't even pay attention.
But yeah, so my pick is him.
Moving on, the Calder Memorial Trophy. Shocker, shocker. My pick is Dollar Bill Kirill, 23-year-old, 25 points in 27 games. We've talked about him plenty. And my backup or my runner-up is Capo Kakinen. I mean, I think that the Minnesota Wild legitimately have two potential Calder Memorial Trophy guys playing right now, especially when you consider that Kevin Lankinen's stats have dropped off a little bit. He was my early pick for the Calder Trophy. His stats have come back down to earth a little bit, and yet Capo Kakinen's stats are just going through the roof. I mean, 12 wins, a 205, and a 927. Can't really argue that he's not playing up to par. So what do you got, Steve?
My Calder Memorial Trophy, obviously Dollar Bill Kirill winning it. I mean, it's hard to argue with it. But my runner-up is actually Nils Höglander from the Vancouver Canucks. And his point production might have dropped off in the last so many weeks as the Canucks themselves have started to struggle. But I think he was such an impact player right out of the gate for them and has been such an impact player even when the points don't come for him that it's hard to argue that he hasn't been one of the best, if not the best rookie this season. I mean, it's hard to argue he's been the best because Kirill Kaprizov is just on another level. But I think he's worth talking about. I think it's at least worth mentioning Nils Höglander.
I love watching him play. He plays like every shift is his last shift in the NHL.
He just never stops working hard, man.
He's my kind of player. I absolutely love watching Nils Höglander play.
He's got so much talent, man. Like, he's so good, too. Like, he plays like he's the best fourth liner in the league in terms of the energy he puts out in every shift, but, like, he has the talent of, like, he could be an elite first-line winger, you know? It's
absolutely
wild.
And Tim?
Obviously the runner-off is Kirill. And then, my runner-up, or my, the runaway candidate, rather, is Kirill. The runner-up is Stützle.
Timothy Stützle. He's been good lately. I mean, he had an okay start to the year, but he's been... I mean, you saw a pass he made the other night to Drake Batherson. Oh, my God.
It's just in all aspects of the game, too. He looks so much more comfortable, like, defensively, offensively. Like, early on, you could tell he's trying to find his footing in the NHL. But now he just looks comfortable, and he's just going to be a monster. He's so good.
Yeah, he's just running through.
You know,
I love to see it.
I'm surprised that, and I know he's hurt right now, I'm surprised that neither one of you mentioned Igor Shasturkin.
He hasn't been great. I mean, his numbers are good, and, like, he's got the numbers to back it up and the wins and everything. He's been the Rangers starter, but, like, there are things about his game that, like, I looked at, and I was like, there's no way this deserves to be the Rookie of the Year, you know? There are some consistency issues in terms of, like, from game to game, and then there's even bigger consistency issues from, like, period to period sometimes that I really don't like.
Even when he makes the save sometimes, I get scared.
Like, I think it's because we're coming from Henrik Lundqvist, who was always so very calm and in control and very, like, goes about things a very specific way, whereas Shasturkin's a little more aggressive, a little more, like, flurry in his prime, a little more, like, flying by the seat of his pants. And, I mean, he's...
Even that game where you saw him get run into, I don't recall off the top of my head which game it was this season, but he got run into one game, and then, like, the rest of the game, he just looked like dog shit. And I get that, like, you get shaken up, but...
My other issue really is, like, he lets in soft ones. Like, there are goals that you look at that he really shouldn't be giving up in key moments of games, and he does. And it's like, all right.
He has Hank syndrome, but it's not just a 5-hole issue, it's an everywhere issue.
It's just he gives up absolute stinkers, and it's really, really concerning. I mean, granted, I'm sure he'll manage to figure it out, and as the Rangers get better defensively, he won't be as leaky because hopefully he won't see as many chances, but I just don't think he's earned a shot at a Calder Trophy this year. I mean, if you'd asked me back at the beginning of the season, I would have said, yeah, maybe. I think the only Ranger that's really should be in the conversation is probably Keandre Miller, and it's not even from, like, a point production perspective because he's not producing like a lot of these other rookies, but, like, in terms of being an effective NHL defenseman, Keandre Miller has been, if not as advertised, probably more than advertised. I mean,
and even then, he makes mistakes on the ice, so I couldn't even give it to him.
I mean, mistakes are,
he makes a lot of big mistakes, so.
Yeah, but that's what you do as a rookie. Like, I'm not gonna hold that against him in my decision. I mean, Kirill Kaprizov coughs up the puck too. Like, all rookies tend to be turnover machines, especially when they're like high offensive players like Keandre Miller's supposed to be. My biggest thing is like he's been good in his own end, and I think playing with Jacob Trouba has been really helpful for him. It settled him down and kept him, locked in playing a very simple, like hot game and not trying to do too much. And if Dobson had continued playing like he was, I probably would have been talking about him in the same conversation, because Dobson's been leagues better this year when he's actually given the shot to play for the Islanders.
Unfortunately, he's on the COVID list at the moment, which is really just an owie.
But when he's been given a regular shift, the whole Rangers staff is now. But the Buchnevich is back.
Yo, I didn't get to shoehorn in my joke about Joe sucking in net, by the way. Cappers or Igor's like Joe in our East League.
Oh my God, that was rough.
Kid left in a shot from like the bottom of the face-off dot.
Yeah, but this year's rookie class was weird to me, honestly, because you had guys that were supposed to be good, like Kirill Kaprizov and Niels Höglander were ranked, I think, in like the top 10 of like the top prospects in the league, right? But you have a team like the Rangers, you have two of arguably the top 5 prospects in the league, and neither one of them is even in the conversation. I mean, Capo is not a rookie anymore, but you have Lafreniere, who's a rookie who's supposed to be like the next big thing, and he's not even in the conversation, like even close to being in the conversation at that.
Yeah, he's had a rough transitional year for sure, and it's funny because we had like the Russian invasion to a certain extent, with Kirill Kaprizov, Igor Shasturkin obviously was here last year, but he's a full-time rookie this year. Ilya Sorokin, and we have a couple of guys in this conversation that are older, you would say, for rookies technically. I mean, Kirill's only 22, I think, but I mean Sorokin's like 25. Shasturkin's
24.
I think he just turned 25 recently, so interesting rookie class this year, but a good one, definitely a good one. I mean, we didn't even mention guys like Vitek Vanacek or Jake Ottinger,
or we didn't talk about the defenseman that Pittsburgh had up for a while. What was it, Marc-Edouard Joseph, who was having himself some Calder level of play before getting sent back down.
Oh, P.O. Joseph, yeah.
Yeah, P.O. Joseph, that's it.
Thought about Vlasic, eh?
Yeah, Marc-Edouard Vlasic. Pickles. Yeah, I don't think he's winning any awards anytime soon.
Second to last category, we have the Jack Adams Award. My pick is Joel Quenneville for the Florida Panthers. Mostly on the strength of, yes, Joel Quenneville did come into a pretty effective team last year, but him being able to guide this team through the loss of Trocheck, through the loss of Mike Hoffman, and some defensemen to go along with that, he's turned the team around, and they're competing for President's Trophy, which is something I did not expect at all. And my runner-up goes to Jeremy Colton of the Chicago Blackhawks for taking a very bad situation. No Kirby Dach, no Jonathan Toews, and he's essentially like squeezing a wet sponge. He's getting every drop he possibly can out of these guys, and it's honestly incredible to watch.
He's also just riding his hot hand, like he sees that Patrick Kane is running, and he just opened the barn door gate and just let him go. He's like, just bro, run free. Do whatever you have to do to win us games.
Let Showtime go.
Yeah.
Tim, Jack Adams Award.
My award goes to probably...
Contrary to what I said earlier, my award goes to David Quinn. I think he's doing a great job.
Nah, it either goes to I don't have a runner-up or a first pick. They're both just the same. It's either Todd McLean of LA, who I think he's just doing a good job with that team. Right?
I mean, they're definitely playing above water.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. I think they're playing above water, and I think that's exactly what he needs to get out of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Dean Evanson of the Minnesota Wild.
Good pick. I know that's one of Steve's picks too, I think.
Yeah, he's my runner-up.
Just because to get the most out of those rookies and to even still get like point production out of like Zuccarello and like Parise in their older careers.
Yeah, Parise's been really good for them this year.
Exactly. Definitely some great heat in the locker room he's throwing.
some heat. He's spitting bars.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Steve?
So my winner is Jeremy Colleton, just because, like you said, like he managed to take an awful situation for the Blackhawks, losing your number one center and then your future number one center in both the same season. And I think he's gotten, Adam Boquist. He's gotten a lot of Adam Boquist in the back end. The kid's got, I think, 16 points in 19 games or something. He's been on fire recently. He's got 17 points in 25 games or something. But Carlton's just been good. And, they're winning games without really any goaltending, which is impressive. And, yeah, Dean Evanson's my runner-up just because Minnesota's defying all expectations and logic. Like, this team is winning games, and I don't know how. I knew Kirill Kaprizov was going to be good. I knew Kaapo Kähkönen was going to be good, but, like, I don't know, man. This is not a... Marcus Foligno is one of their leading scorers, if that tells you anything. Like, they're getting contributions from guys who have historically been, like, bottom six players. So he's getting like you said with the wet sponge analogy, he's just wringing everything he can out of everybody on this team. And it's working so far.
Yeah. I think they're a very worthy pick. And just to, piggyback off of that, when we go to the GM of the Year award, my award is Bill Guerin of the Minnesota Wild. Not only did he make the tough decision this past offseason to move on from beloved son Mikko Koivu, he made the tough decision to move on from Devin Dubnyk, and he trusted his young guys. He decided, hey, this is the direction we're going to go. We're going to trade away Eric Staal. We're going to trade away Mikko Koivu. We're going to trade away Devin Dubnyk, and we're going to run with the young guys. And his shrewd moves have paid off in spades. He's absolutely done a fantastic job. And my runner-up, as much as I hate to say it, because I hate to give this team any credit, is Marc Bergevin of the Montreal Canadiens. I think his move for Jake Allen, his move for Tyler Toffoli, Joel Edmondson, had a fantastic offseason, and it's paying off. Granted, they are third in that division in point percentage. They're still not out of the woods yet. There's still plenty of time left in the season, but so far, the moves that he's made specifically in this offseason have contributed to that lineup. Also, his trade for Josh Anderson, forgot about that. That was a fantastic move because Anderson's having a much better year than Max Domi is, but I hate to give him credit because this team should be better than they are, yet they're having a good season. So those are my two picks. Yeah. What about you, Steve?
I don't know his name, but I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers GM because I know they recently changed general managers. But I think he's been, like you said, shrewd. It's just a lot of, like, smart dealings he's made. Getting out from under the Mike Matheson contract. Granted, you took on the Patrick Hornquist contract, but Hornquist has been amazing for them, so you can't really complain there. He didn't really do much, but the little things he did has put this team in President's Trophy contention, and that's more than I would have said at the beginning of the year, And my runner-up, probably Lou Lamoriello of the Islanders. Again, just steady, didn't really do a whole lot, but the things he did do, like bringing in J.G. Pageau last year, have proved to be huge this year for the team. And bringing up guys like Wahlstrom and the decision to use guys like Wahlstrom and Noah Dobson regularly have really contributed, I think, to the Islanders' overall success. Also the goaltending.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, the Panthers GM, just for everyone listening, is Bill Zito. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I didn't know. I know they just had changed over from... Oh my God, what's his name? I can see his face. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He was the GM forever. Dale Talon, I think?
Dale Talon. Yep.
Yeah.
Tim, GM of the year.
GM of the year. Wow, it has to go to the Buffalo Sabres GM.
Kevin Adams, clutching it up.
It has to go to Kevin Adams for just doing the best job he can. Really clutching it out for that team.
Somehow making a bad situation even worse.
No, it's actually the GM of, if we're really being sarcastic, it's the GM of Columbus.
Oh my God.
Jarmo Kekalainen.
Yeah, it's actually him. If we're talking about the real
bro.
Hog champ.
Did you see him make that draft that guy that nobody knew about in the first round? Absolute big brain. reaching 400 picks for some guy.
Yeah, it's a yikes. That is a...
You know who else, if we're going to be sarcastic, we could give this award to?
Who's that?
The Boston Bruins. I can't remember his name. Don Sweeney, right? He's the general manager. Don Sweeney, essentially casting off his captain and franchise cornerstone on the back end for Brandon Carlo and Jacob Zaboral to get bigger roles. And getting a team that really should be competing still. And I mean, granted, they're in a good spot in their division because their division isn't very good. It's good, but they have teams they can beat up on, like Buffalo. And they're proving more now to be a one-line team than they were recently, because without Pasternak, they don't do anything. Whichever way he goes, the team goes. So I think that the GM's inability to address any of their depth concerns on either the blue line or up front really takes the cake here for them.
So before we sign off, I just want to ask a general question about the season, and that's, how do you think the season is going in terms of the play? Because this was a question coming into this year with no fans in the building, restricted travel within the divisions. There was questions of, the readiness of these players, how they might not be as high flying as they usually are. Like, what do you guys think about the level of play we've seen from these?
The truth. Early on this season was kind of boring to me, I'm not going to lie. Like, it's not because the games weren't good, but it's like a lot of these games early on lacked atmosphere. And granted, I understand why there were no fans in buildings. I still don't think there should be fans in buildings. I think it's ridiculous that you're going to put 1,800 people all together. But whatever, it's a whole thing. Anyway, I think recently, though, as the season has gone on, I think at this point the games are about as good as they would have been last year. And especially because you're playing the same teams in your division so many times, these games are taking on really, really, like, nasty undertones, Like, Pittsburgh, the next time Pittsburgh plays Boston, it's going to be a big deal, because especially with Brandon Tanev back in the lineup, and they play 8 times a year now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what game number that was, so just say that was number 3. There are 5 more games now. And that's not even including the playoffs. And there's a very good chance both those teams are going to meet each other in either the first or second round. So I like that aspect of it. I really enjoy that. I mean, the level of play has been good. Some players have looked like they've struggled, but like that's like any other year, right?
I saw a comment from a player saying something along the lines of, you're not going to go out there and fight the guys when you have to go out there and play them again the next night, and then play them again the next night. It's just not worth it. Like, you can't afford to get banged up night after night after night after night by the same guys.
Yeah, especially when the schedule is so compressed this year.
Especially if you're like someone like a smaller guy who's the enforcer on your team per se. And
Yeah,
you have to go out there and get beat up every night.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not easy on the body. I mean, I'm curious, like, from a player's perspective, how this has been for them, because the limited travel is weird. The isolating is probably very strange. I mean,
I feel like I've seen less intensity in the games.
in some games, I feel like some games don't matter. Like the Rangers against Buffalo, the game felt like it was nothing. Like Buffalo was so bad, and the Rangers were so like meh. And I feel like that's been a lot with a lot of these games, especially with teams
Even
that
the
are in
Canadian
weird divisions.
games, I feel like the Canadian games just don't mean as much.
They started off really, really intense and really fun, but like at this point, the division itself isn't competitive enough to like sustain that level of intensity. Like the Canucks and Montreal aren't going to be as intense against one another because Montreal's going to just wipe the floor with Vancouver at this point, you know?
The Battle of Alberta isn't really much of a battle when
Well, both teams aren't
when
very
they play
good.
each other 8 times and like.
Well, I mean, they used to play each other 8 times.
But I'm saying though, like when they play each other 8 3 of those times are in one session.
Yeah, I mean, they used to do stuff like this back in the day, though. So I don't know if it's necessarily that issue. I think like just.
Well, I'm saying like I feel less intensity in the games when they constantly play each other like that. Like when the teams meet for like the Battle of Alberta, it's cool because it doesn't happen.
I mean, it still happens 6 times a year normally.
Yeah,
they're only playing each other 2 more times than they would.
Not that. But like I said, it's about the succession of it.
I mean, Yeah, they're playing. Every team's playing 2 game sets with each other, which can't be helped. I mean, you come in for 2 games and then you're gone. But I think that if anything, that actually adds to the intensity because you're seeing each other every night. You're seeing each other 2 nights in a row.
I'm just
You
not
have more
seeing it
chance to
though.
pay back. I just don't think we're seeing it from Calgary and Edmonton specifically because neither team has really been that good.
I
Calgary's
haven't
been
seen it
kind of
from like any of
terrible.
the teams though. Is my point. Like they were just the.
I don't know. I've seen some real nasty games this year, probably more so than I have in the past.
I think as we get closer to the end of the season, specifically because you're only fighting within division, right? I think as we get closer to the end of the season, we'll see a spike. We'll see a huge exponential rise, right? Because playing the Rangers, Islanders Rangers played 2 times at the beginning of the year, right? Those was games 1 and 2. The Islanders and Rangers have not played each other since, and they played each other I think 6 times in the last 2 months of the season.
Yeah.
And now,
And the Rangers
granted,
played the Bruins, 6 times before this, and then they don't play them again until the end of the year.
and now granted, at this very moment in time, the Rangers do not look as competitive as they should be. But suppose they go on another run, they're only 8 points out of the playoffs at this point. If the Bruins start to struggle or the Penguins start to struggle and the Rangers make another run, this could very well be 2 teams beating each other up for that last playoff spot. Or like you said, the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Boston Bruins, or the Bruins and the Flyers. These are 2 teams that are on the bubble right now. The difference between playing them in game 1 and 2 versus games 55 and 56 is going to be huge.
Oh, without a doubt.
So I think to a certain extent, yeah, I would agree with both of you. I think in the beginning of the season, we saw a little bit of a ho-hum,
It was very businesslike and sterile, I guess is the best way to put it,
yeah, here to play hockey again, right? But I think that as the season has gone on and the players start to realize that everyone at the beginning of the year was all 4 point game, 4 point game, 4 point game. But it's not until you start getting into the nitty gritty of the standings and you're like, oh, we're halfway through the season. These are 4 point games, that you start to kind of realize it clicks in your head. So I think the beginning of the season was a little bit lackluster. I think a lot of that has to do with the circumstances. For the players, it's probably just a bizarre, out of body, weird
wouldn't say
situation.
It was lackluster though. Like there was a lot of scoring.
Well, that's the thing. The games didn't feel all that exciting though. Teams were just coming in and blowing each other off the ice.
I just wanted to make it clear that's what we were saying.
Yeah.
No, there was just there was nothing to them. It was just every team was coming out and shelling each other for 7 goals, and it was all right.
Yeah.
It was very business-like. Everybody felt like they were just doing their job. It didn't feel like there was any passion involved, and I don't know.
I imagine.
I agree, but I also think the rest had something to do with that because I don't know if you remember.
Thing. They were terrible.
Yeah, they've been not. I think.
What was it in the first 2 games of the year? They handed out a combined 50 penalties or something.
Yeah, it was just. Ugh.
And now they're.
And now
I don't even know what to say about them now.
They've swallowed their whistles almost.
They've half swallowed their whistles and then half are just
calling really chintzy I don't know if you remember.
Just the guy falls and it's just oh nope, gotta be it.
I was watching a game the other night. I can't remember if it was the Rangers and the Flyers or if it was the Bruins and whoever they were playing, but there was a hooking call, right? I was I didn't see anything. And all of a sudden I see the replay and the referee called. The stick came up and touched him on his hands, sure. But the guy threw his hands back and fell down he got hooked, and it was this is the stuff they're calling. But then you'll see, to your point, when Brandon Tanev skates 150 feet and blows Jared Tenorti off the ice he's a fucking heat-seeking missile, it took them 45 seconds to come up with a call.
Or even the other night with Brendan Smith, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
How does Brendan Smith get jumped into a fight? So he starts fighting the guy, right?
Oh no, you know what the best was?
And then the guy comes over and he starts fighting him, and then so he fights him.
You know what the best was last night? When I think it was the Islander game, the guy challenged one of the Washington players challenged Scott Mayfield, and Scott Mayfield dropped the gloves and started swinging, and the guy didn't drop his gloves and turtled.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's you initiate, and then the Islanders ended up coming out shorthanded out of that.
Oh,
right.
And by the
and
way,
I don't understand.
By the way, not to cut you off in the middle of your finish, but by the way, Matt Barzal gets a cross check in the back that the guy breaks his stick over Matt Barzal's back with the referee looking at him and no call.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. The officiation is so bizarre. I don't understand how you can look at that, right? The guy challenges Scott Mayfield. Like, he engaged Scott Mayfield first. Scott Mayfield's like, all right, bro, let's do it. And then he's the only one with a penalty. Or like Tim said, with the thing with Brendan Smith, or the guy smashing his stick over fucking Matt Barzell. It's just been so wildly inconsistent. I mean, it's like I'm watching NFL replacement refs.
Or like that delayed game the other night.
Oh my God, where they missed it, where he just turned and fired it over the glass.
He hit the netting.
Yeah, he missed the glass, hit the netting, and they were like, well, if the netting wasn't there, would it's like, yeah, would have went out of play. It's the whole point. It's the penalty.
You know what the thing is, too? Not to cut you off, but one of you just said replacement refs. I think it was you, Steve, right?
Yeah, they have a lot of new referees this year.
I was going to say, the other night against the Islanders, it was Dean Morton and some guy who this was like his 30th game reffing. I think they had to hire a lot of people because there's no travel.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what happened. So we did actually kind of end up with an NFL replacement ref situation. We had a bunch of kids like learning on the job. And listen, learning on the job is great if you work at like, I don't know if you're a construction worker or if you're a fucking office worker, but learning on the job is not how you're supposed to do it as a referee. Like, you cannot be coming in and making these mistakes, you know? And it's not
I think it's just like they had to hire them on the spot, so there was no like
training period or anything.
Yeah. Like there was no clearance or training or anything. It was like, okay, so you've reffed a few high-level games in college, you're good.
And I think a lot of that falls on the league itself, because the league knew what it was trying to do in the run up to the season, right? Like we'd had the format laid out for a couple of 4 or 5 weeks before we actually knew this thing was going to start. You know,
it'd be like Stonehill getting, if you remember him from the rink.
Yeah,
because Stonehill reffed high-level college. It'd be like him doing it.
Yeah, no,
that guy couldn't. That guy was blind.
So, I don't know. I mean, I still am having fun with the season. To answer the original question, I mean, like, I love hockey. But
of course, yeah.
If you ever see this, bro, I love you.
It's not it's just not the same, I guess. But like, it was never going to be the same, so I'm not holding it against it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we knew going in that it's different, and for the players, it's probably got to be a very bizarre experience for them. That a lot of the world is still shut down. Social distancing is still in effect. Masks are still being worn if you're smart.
I mean, these guys are getting shuttled around like they're the president of the United States. You
know?
Like
they're watching on the news. Businesses are still closed. People can't go anywhere, and they're expected to go out every night. And I mean, it's a job, but it's got to be weird walking into an empty building. It's got to be a weird out of body like situation where you're like, wow, I'm still being paid to play professional sports.
It's got to be weird when your wife can go to the grocery store and you can't.
Well, there's that, but I also think it's got to be weird from them in the fact that like they're used to like coming and going as they please. You know, like you fly into the city, you go to the hotel, you check in, you go to the restaurant, you hang out. Now it's like these guys are like not prisoners, but like they're getting shuttled like the president. Like they're accounted for every hour of every day, where they are, where they've been, who they've seen. You know, they're under guard when they go to the arena. They're not allowed to interact with anybody outside of their group. Like it's got to just be so bizarre for them because they're used to just going to the rink and playing hockey, and now it's like so much more than that. You know, like it's taken over pretty much most of their outside lives as well. Like you're saying, like they can't just go out to the grocery store. Like they can't be like, oh, this new stick came out, I want to. They would never go to the store. They're professionals and get one sent to them, but you can't be like, oh, I want to go to Hockey Monkey today and just take a look at the stuff. You know,
it's definitely got to be strange, and I think that might be a reason as to the slower start to the year. But I have, you know, like Steve said, it's hockey. I've been having a fantastic time. I'm just so grateful that this is even happening right now, and I have no doubt in my mind that the intensity will be ramped up, especially the intensity when we hit the playoffs, because we saw it get pretty nasty last year in the playoffs, and I have no doubt that will be the case this year.
And I just want to make one other point about this season specifically, and last season, I guess, the bubble tournament. Anybody who says that those this year's Stanley Cup champion and last year's Stanley Cup champion should come with an asterisk on their name is an idiot. Like,
these come with an asterisk for a harder difficulty.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if anything, these seasons have been more difficult because the situation off the ice has been so dramatically, like, ridiculous and crazy that, like, the fact that we even managed to get we're going to get 2 Stanley Cup champions in these 2 years is a miracle in itself. You know? So,
I think... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so for any of you hot take artists out there saying that these 2 Stanley Cup winners deserve asterisks, you're stupid. No, they don't.
Rangers scored, by the way.
Did they?
I think that the playoffs last year and the level of play that we saw last year. Because I had some questions. I was like, are we going to see like actual intense playoff hockey? All of that was wiped away with that first game, that 5 overtime game between Tampa Bay and Columbus. Last year's Stanley Cup, this year's Stanley Cup, just as legitimate as any other Stanley Cup. There's absolutely no reason to say otherwise. The play of last year had convinced me, and I mean, not that I needed convincing, but I was a little bit worried. I was like, maybe they're just going to kind of like chintzy, like, oh, it's playoff hockey, but I'm not going to. No, like we had guys blasting each other in the neutral zone just like any other playoff run, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
there were scraps, there were fights. These guys wanted it, man.
So it's absolutely as intense as it's ever been in the playoffs. And the regular season, if anything, playing the same team 8 times a year only makes it harder because you have to find new ways to beat them because they know how you're going to play and you know how they're going to play. And I think that this year's Stanley Cup champion has the added difficulty of not only do you play your teammate, the other teams 8 times a year, but then you go into the playoffs. You're still in your division for the first round, but then you have to readjust, and now you're out of division.
2 teams. Yeah, you have to play 2 teams you haven't seen at all this year.
So, completely legitimate. There's no asterisk next to this Stanley Cup or last year's in my mind, and yeah, just can it. If you think you're some smart guy, asterisk. Yeah, you wouldn't be saying that if your team won it. So let's cool the Jets on that.
I mean, just to put it that way, like what was it last year? If a team like the Rangers had made a run to the Stanley Cup final, they would have had to win an additional 3 games. You know, in addition to the 16 they already would need to win a Stanley Cup. They would need to win 19 games. Yeah. You're gonna tell me that's easier than 16 games under normal circumstances?
And are you also really going to sit there and tell me that a Tampa Bay Lightning team like there was last year didn't deserve to win that cup anyway, regardless of the circumstances? Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
So, any final thoughts on our midway mark podcast?
No, I just want to congratulate David Backes for being the again, the inaugural Hall of Fame Bum Award winner.
Back to back, baby.
Maybe next year I'll pick on somebody else. I'm looking at you, Dion Phaneuf. You're next.
Oh, God.
That's right, Dion.
Any final thoughts, Tim?
Yeah, I have a few final thoughts. So, first off, I would like to point out that our fantasy league, the stand-ins up until this point, because we spoke about it last week on the podcast, I'll give everyone a live update. We have Rob in first. We have Jeremy in second. We have Chris in third. We have me in fourth. Steve's in fifth, tied with me. Or fourth, I guess.
Yeah.
Joe is in sixth. And Nick, our bum of the year, is in seventh.
Yeah, the Benders Hockey League bum of the year, Nick.
Exactly. So, today's the trade deadline. We have a few hours left. We're working on some big trades. I'd like to point out that you should go watch our new...
Anyway, I want to thank... next week's podcast, Hot Takes episode. We are doing Hot Takes Hockey. I think the season has gone on long enough, about halfway through, that it is time for some hot takes. So if you have any hot takes, unpopular opinions, interesting or unique questions, put it down in the comment section. We'll be collecting those from our boys. I'll be collecting those from myriad of sources. So if you got any, let us know. Hit us up down in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter at LightingTheLamp1, or you can hit me up on my personal at LBG_Rob. Let me know your hot takes. So I'm looking forward to that episode. We'll try to get the gang back. We'll try to get everyone back on the podcast all together. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys again next time.
Bye.